Hi, Bobby.
Good morning.
Where's Terrence or Terry? Anyway, do I want to work here? How to create a winning culture? Let's get right into it. Culture comes from the Latin word that means care. How do you care for yourself? How do you care for others? All culture starts within you. So I want you to think about the animal world here for a moment. There's culture in the animal world. So let's go in, and the frog and the scorpion have met at the bank of the river at the same time. The frog is about ready to hop in the river and swim across. The scorpion sees what is about ready to happen and engages the frog in conversation. He says, "Mr. Frog, I'm a scorpion. I cannot swim. Would you be so kind as to let me hop on your back and swim me across to the other side? I would be most grateful." The frog looks at the scorpion and says, "No way. Scorpions sting frogs and kill them. I'd be swimming across the river and you'd sting me and I'd drown and die. No way." The scorpion looks at the frog and he says, "Mr. Frog, you're not using your frog brain. I'm not interested in committing suicide. I just want to get to the other side. Please do me the favor." So anyway, the frog thinks about it. He says, "Okay, hop on." So they're going across the river. Halfway across the river, the scorpion stings the frog. They're now going down in the water for the third time. The frog cannot believe what is happening. And he says, "How could you do this? How could you do this? I'm going to drown and die. How could you do this?" And the scorpion replied, "Because I am a scorpion." Scorpions have a certain culture. Frogs have a certain culture. Everything starts within you. So, what culture are you bringing as you lead your people in work? So, care for others. That's what you have to have. Their sense of being included, which basically is inclusiveness, and the gift of inclusion. Somebody once asked me at a talk, "What's your definition of love?" Boy, we could go on forever on that. But the real definition of love is the gift of inclusion. And you start giving that to your people at work, it is absolutely incredible what will happen. I have a story I shared with a couple of people here. This was back in the 70s. I was 6'2", 190. I'm now 6'2", about 210. But anyway, I always loved basketball, and it happens we're in the middle of March Madness right now. I'm in graduate business school, and I always played basketball. I was not even good enough to make my high school team, but I always kept practicing. I was a very good tennis player. I did play tennis in high school and college. But I loved basketball, and I tried out for this AAU basketball team. AAU, back then, they were written up in the Denver Post, the Rocky Mountain News, and you had former NBA players, and all the players on our team were former Division I scholarship players, who, by the way, had played against Bill Walton and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So we had people 6'8", 6'9". I was the only one who made the team who had never played in high school, who had never had a college scholarship. So anyway, I needed to feel included. And what was great, this team included me. Matter of fact, as the season progressed, I became a starter, which was just beyond my wildest dreams. So now we get in the city championship, AAU, and we're playing former Denver Nuggets, and our scores back then were like 115 to 100. There's a lot going on. We get down to the championship game. 10 seconds left, we call timeout. And in the huddle, Doug Gosney, our leading scorer, the leading scorer all time at the University of Denver, says to me, "You're going to take the final shot." The reason you're going to take the final shot, listen to this, is everybody knows that you don't have any college background. You have no history of success, but we all believe you're going to make it. So anyway, he says, "I'm going to dribble into the middle, I'm going to kick it out to the left side, and you take your shot." So we got on the floor. That's what happened. As I took my shot in the left-hand corner, a guy 6'8" came up and just absolutely flattened me, sent me back into the bleachers. I never saw what happened. The next thing I knew, my teammates are picking me up on their shoulders. The ball went in. We won the game. But if I had not had a sense of inclusion about being part of that team, I know that I couldn't have done what I did. But to show you how quickly culture can change, and you women will appreciate this, our center, Dick Sharphorn, who played against Bill Walton. Dick was 6'9". He comes over and he says, and picture there are thousands of people in the stands. He says, my girlfriend's always wanted to meet you. I said, but I'm sweaty. He said, don't worry about that. Just go up there, give her a hug. And he points up in the stands. I run up in the stands. I didn't share this part of the story last night. I go up in the stands, and I put my arm around this lady, and she's just looking at me like, you are really weird, really aggressive. And all of a sudden, I have this blow to the back of my head, and this guy, and I won't use his words, but don't mess with my woman. I had the wrong girl. So culture can change very quickly. She was 2 girls over, okay? So anyway, the gift of inclusion is very, very important. Okay, the compelling reason to have a winning culture. We have more productive teams. We have happier teams. I'm getting feedback when I stand right here. Anyway. And as a result, we have reduced turnover, less turmoil, and more people want to work here. This slide is very, very important. By the way, what I'm sharing with you, everything in this talk has hundreds of scientific studies with tens of thousands of people behind it. So when you read this isn't just my opinion. This is what really does happen. So, do I want to work here? There are 3 factors. The work, the process for doing the work, and the people. What's interesting, I have some companies that hire me to actually screen people who are interviewing for jobs. I will tell you what, in my janitorial company, everybody knew what the work was. Matter of fact, janitorial to me is so noble because what do? We preserve and enhance assets. That's exactly what we do. Everybody knows the work. Now, the process for doing the work, they can discover that. Sometimes that can cause people to leave. But the big thing, the number one thing, is the people. How often has somebody said, well, I'm leaving for a better opportunity? What is a better opportunity? And the first thing you want to think is, well, I was making 13 an hour here, maybe I can make 14 an hour someplace else. I will tell you what it is in all the studies. Money is not the main thing. It's the people that you work for and the people you work with. So, what is the first thing you have to do in order to have a good culture? You have to build safety. I want you to think about it. The frog and the scorpion couldn't have a good culture because there wasn't safety there. If there is not safety, what you're doing is you're looking to get through the day instead of what you can get from the day. You're looking to be creative only in terms of how to survive, not to thrive. Safety is very, very important. And one of the things is, with building safety, you have to have belonging cues. Just like all those players who embraced me. I had no Division I background, no high school background. You have to embrace your people personally. Personally. Very, very important. And you have to manage collaboration, not status. Manage collaboration, not status. Let me tell you how important this is. Researchers discovered something very, very interesting. How many of you are in an organization, obviously, where you have different people at different levels? I know, Paul, you have that. Lavelle, right? So everybody has a status. But what's interesting, if you manage your business by status, it doesn't really go very far. Because people know, well, I can contribute, but the other person up above me really isn't interested. So anyway, what the researchers did is, they got various rooms and they took 4 CEOs, put them in a room, 4 doctors, 4 college presidents, 4 engineers, 4 attorneys, and 4 CPAs, and 4 kindergartners. 4 kindergartners. And here's what they did. The rooms, they had one-way glass so the researchers could observe what was going on. They had complete audio and video. And here was the task each team was given. They were given 4 sticks of spaghetti, uncooked spaghetti. They were given a yard of tape, a yard of string, and a marshmallow. And they were told in 15 minutes who can create the tallest structure with the marshmallow sitting on top. The kindergartners won. And they were going, that is amazing. So they started repeating this around the country. And the kindergartners always won. different kindergartners, different CEOs, different college presidents. And what they found out was, when you have professional people, we manage status. In other words, I'm going to respect you, Paul, because of something you do. Lavelle, I'm going to respect you. So we'd be sitting there in our group, right? And I'd pick this up and Lavelle would say, well, Steve, maybe we could do it this way. And Paul says, well, I think maybe we could do this. We're all very courteous to each other. Kindergartners have no context of status. So this is what was going on. One kindergartner would go in with this, another one would grab it, and they would just go back and forth. So they were managing collaboration, not status. And the thing is, when you build safety, that is the only way, by the way, that you can be creative and remain relevant as a business. Think about that. And every act of creation is first an act of destruction. Every time you create something, you're destroying something that was not there before. Even if you're altering it slightly, every act of creation is an act of destruction. So without a safe environment, you will not be creative. You will not respond well to change. Very, very important. Now, here's what's interesting. Getting back to the kindergartners, the researchers said, maybe this is just a cultural thing. Maybe this is just something that goes on here in the United States. Let's pick another part of the world. Let's go to Japan and repeat this. And guess what? The kindergartners in Japan won again. So this is universal. Manage collaboration, not status. And by the way, to show you what the difference was, on average, the kindergartners built a structure with a marshmallow on top that was 28 inches tall. The other groups averaged 16 to 18 inches. Yes, so very, very important. Number two, second thing. So the first thing is you got to build safety. Very, very important. If you don't feel safe, you're not going to be creative, because if you're creative and you fail and you're in a negative environment, that's not a good thing. Nobody wants to play the game, I bet my job. If somebody comes to you, Bobby, and says, hey, I found a different way of, let's say, cleaning floors. Floors was the business I was in, hard floors. I did work for like Walmart, Kroger, Safeway. But if somebody comes to you with a different way to do it, and they're belittled for it, or you don't listen to them, then it's going to be hard to make progress. Even if you might think it's stupid, because here's the response I hear from most people, and Paul made a good point last night. We manage systems and we lead people. And the only way you absolutely can lead people is you have to hear them. Notice I didn't say listen to them. People say I'm a good listener. Let me tell you what. I already know that you might not be a good listener, because you have to hear the context. You have to hear the emotion. You have to hear where somebody's coming from. That is such an important way to feel included. And I'm sure all of us in here, obviously not in our businesses because we run them perfectly, but maybe in our personal lives, have not been good at hearing. But share vulnerability. This is very, very important. You share vulnerability. It's being able to say, I don't know, or I need help, sparks in hundreds of scientific studies greater cooperation and trust. Very, very interesting. Let me tell you what sharing vulnerability is. If I come to you, Lorena, and say, you know what, I was very good at cleaning hard floors, but I really didn't know that much about carpet. I go, Lorena, I need some advice on how to do carpets. I just really don't know how to do it. She can have a couple of responses. One is, well, you need to read up on it some more, okay? Which, by the way, is the convenient thing for all of us. Or today, go check it out on the web. You know what I mean? Go figure. Or she can say, I understand what your problem is. I remember one time, I was good at carpets, but I needed to go actually talk to somebody to learn how to clean hard floors. We have just shared vulnerability. So if I share something with you, Bobby, and you don't pick up on the key, the vulnerability is not shared. Does that make sense? So anytime as a leader where you can show that you share vulnerability, it's absolutely amazing what will happen in terms of cooperation and trust. And they measure these things. It's absolutely amazing what happens. So in my janitorial business, everything was done at night. We ended up doing 55 stores a night, 364 nights a year, all the way from Bryan College Station to Galveston, and sometimes over to Beaumont. And I had 15 trucks out, different crews, doing the floors. And yet, I was hitting that ceiling. I was doing okay financially, but I couldn't get to the next level. And I hired 12 general managers in 12 months. That's how bad I was at hiring. But my 12th one, Robert Brock, I will be forever grateful to him. He was a poor boy from Alabama whose family had no indoor plumbing. But boy, did he have sense. And he came to me one Friday. Friday was payday. And he said, you have something great going on here, but you got to get out of the way. Here's what I would do. I would engage everybody, because where's Greg? I can't see him, but anyway. Like Greg loves to engage everyone. I'd love to connect. But here's what I was doing. I was always refining in the name of improving the business. So I'd go into a store, I would see something, well, maybe we could have done this a little better, or maybe we could have done that. Nobody ever had a sense of completion. They could share their experience, but my response was, well, we could have done this, or we could have done that. So I wasn't sharing vulnerability. And he said, we need to change things around here. So he said, my suggestion is the fourth Friday of each month, because Friday was always payday, we hold a barbecue. It was like, what? Yes, because everybody worked at night from 11 at night till 7 in the morning. So we're going to have a barbecue breakfast, and you're going to meet the guys as a person, as a human being, not as a human doing, and you're going to connect with them in a different way. And you're not going to offer any critiques on anything. That's the job of my management team and me. It was incredible what happened once that started to happen. I learned things about people's stories and their lives that were great. I got to share, but sharing vulnerability is absolutely one of the keys to building cooperation and trust. And we went from 15 stores to 55 in about 2 years. Got written up nationally in some journal, which I can't remember. But the bottom line is sharing vulnerability is absolutely critical. Number 3. So it's really neat. You only have 3 things you really have to remember today. Number 1, build safety. Number 2, share vulnerability. And number 3 is you have to establish a clear purpose. A clear purpose is every human being has a desire deep down inside to do work on something that is bigger than themselves. It's such a privilege to be here this morning because this is much bigger than myself. Think about it. Hopefully I get to serve in that way. Every day, what you do is you serve hundreds of other people. I'm not saying that's what your purpose is. The city of Conroe, where we are, has a great, I think, mission statement. It says, to serve the citizens of Conroe and to exceed their expectations. To serve the citizens of Conroe and to exceed their expectations. Absolutely wonderful. So when people have a clear purpose, here's what's interesting. They will make the right decisions. They will make the right decisions. They don't have to be told, oh, you need to get this corner and edge, because maybe they already have that in their mind. They have to do an excellent job. Let's see. So purpose is bigger than any one individual. And all of us want to belong to something that's bigger than ourselves. So purpose is bigger than any one of us, allows us to belong to something bigger than ourselves. The questions we want answered are, why are we here? What is everyone working for? And how are we going to accomplish the outcome? So, September 30th, 1982, changed American history. Johnson & Johnson, the large medical manufacturer, was sailing along with their new product, Tylenol. On September 30th, 1982, they discovered in Chicago that bottles of Tylenol had been tainted with cyanide. All the foil covers you see today, all the child-proof caps, that all started because of what happened then. So Johnson & Johnson's sailing along. This happens, and the Food and Drug Administration says, you need to recall the bottles of Tylenol in the Chicago area. So that was going to cost them $1 million, which was something they could handle. What was interesting, 2 years before, the CEO of Johnson & Johnson was reading the company's credo that Mr. Johnson had put together in the 1930s. And he thought, is this something we even follow? Is this something that means anything? So he asked his executives to look at it, and he said, you know, if it's something good, let's start getting this into the minds of the people so people will make the right decisions as they go along. They don't have to come to us all the time. And they looked at it and they said, you know, this is good. This is good. So starting in 1980, and Johnson & Johnson at the time had over 50,000 employees, they started putting this credo into people's minds. The first thing was to take care of society. Isn't that interesting? So what this led to, Johnson & Johnson gets hit with this, and you just can't imagine back then this was huge, huge news. It was very, very scary. Nothing like this had ever happened. So there were over 200 ad hoc committee meetings. This could be with executives, it could be groups of administrative assistants. People got together independently. This was the neat thing. And they went to the executives and said, you know what? This is not a good response. We need to recall every bottle of Tylenol in the United States. Every bottle of Tylenol. This was going to cost the company $100 million. The analysts on Wall Street said, this is the end of Tylenol. They said this could be the end of Johnson & Johnson. But Johnson & Johnson went ahead because there was a clear purpose. And they recalled every bottle of Tylenol in the country. 2 months later, Tylenol's market share was back and continued to increase, and Johnson & Johnson went on to have record profits. The point being is, when you have a clear purpose and people know exactly what it is, I will promise you, not only does it create a better culture, everybody really knows what it is they need to do. They can make those little decisions that will keep you from having to be like a helicopter over them. Very, very important. So, how are we going to accomplish the outcome? You have a clear purpose. So, anyway, I need a volunteer from the audience. And actually, she didn't volunteer. Yes, you did? Okay. I'm going to turn this on here so you will be heard. Okay. All right. And can everybody hear Lorena? Yes. Would everybody prefer to hear Lorena? Yes. Okay. Of course. So what we're going to talk about, there are 5 words that can build or destroy a culture. By the way, I want to say before we get into this, they are all good words. But how they're used are very, very important. And when I work in team building and leadership, these words can either bring a team together or they can pull them apart. And I'm sure you're going to recognize all of them, but you said you had some things you wanted to take out on me. So anyway, here we go. The first word is try.
Okay. Steve?
Yes?
When you finish your presentation, I need you to go to all the restrooms and all of this floor and scrub the floors.
I'll try. The word try means someday, sometime, never. Now, and by the way, this is all from studies, all right? It's a perfectly good word, but be careful how you use it. So if you're talking to somebody on your team and they say, I'll try to do it, watch out, okay? All right. What?
I didn't ask you.
I know, I was ordered, but you said I had special dispensation because this was a convention, you know. Understand what the relationship is, you know. So anyway, a better thing to say is, Lorena, I will do my best. Now, what if Lorena knows that I'm kind of good at this, but do you ever have, none of you here have ever been erratic in how you do something? In other words, if you clean something, it's always perfect, right? It's just your people where there's the problem, right? So anyway, Lorena, I say I will do my best, but Lorena knows that I have a tendency to overlook corners and edges and some things. So then what I have to say is, I will do whatever it takes. So I asked my good buddy, Bobby, to come along with me, because Bobby is much better at doing that sense of team. So first word is the word try. Now the next one is why. Why is a deadly word. Lorena, why are we here in Galveston? Just listen to that. Why are we here in Galveston?
Why not?
Why not? You have to handle it with humor, but why actually distances us in our relationships. Back in the early 90s, my son was having all sorts of challenges, went to a child psychologist, and it was interesting. These 5 words I'm sharing with you today, I didn't realize that 10 years later, I'd also be reading about them in business. If you ask your teenagers why all the time, it puts them on the defensive. Actually, it distances people. I had an episode, actually, I was doing a coaching appointment in Panera, in Conroe. I was in a booth, and the booth behind us, these 2 ladies had sat down. And all of a sudden, you could hear the volume escalating. And this one lady says, "Why did you buy a Buick?" And it was like, I said to my client, "Let's be quiet." The other lady says, "Because I really like it." And the other lady goes, "Didn't you know that J.D. Power and Associates rated whatever it was better than the Buick? You really should be more careful. Why don't you ever check into these things? Why?" And the other lady says, "I just really like my Buick." And she says, I just don't get you. I just don't get you." And finally, I hear a hand slam on the table, and the lady gets up and she goes, "It's just like you. You're right 97% of the time and you're wrong 4%. And she walked out. I thought, wait, 97 and 4. But the lady, very often when people ask why, what it does is it puts you on the defensive. And you just don't, you're having to justify something. Here's where why is good. Why is it, Bobby, that you have had such a good career with Rice University? If you can ask something positive about it, it's good. Now, in the janitorial or custodial business, there's all sorts of wonderful equipment. You have systems that can help you, right, Paul? So you can say, why is it that this system is so good? So when it comes to functionality, why is a great place to be. But when you use it personally, be very, very careful with your employees. If you say, why? Instead say this: what was it that brought about this result? Or how did you arrive at doing this? And shut up and listen. This is really hard with teenagers when they come home at 2 in the morning and the back window is smashed out of their car. And it's like, say, "So Harlan, what caused that window to be smashed out of your car?" And shut up and listen. And then after they're finished, say, "Thank you very much." Don't come back with a criticism or a critique. Does that make sense? I can't tell you how much this will help. So anyway, are you ready for the next one? Because this is one of your favorite ones. You do it all the time. What's the next word? Oh, you have to see it? You told me you had this memorized. Oh, yes. Ready? Go ahead.
Steve, I really like your jacket, but you should wear a tie.
I need a sip of water here before. So I should really wear a tie. That's your freaking opinion, huh? Okay. All right, the word should. The word should. Perfectly good word. If we say we should be moral, we should be ethical, we should be honest, those are all good things. But when we start using it on people, it's not good. So she said, I should wear a tie. So now here's what happens. Next time I see her, I'm wearing a tie. And here's what she says. You really should have one with more color in it. Should, and you want to write this down, is about guilt and obligation. I'm trying to please her, but she will never articulate exactly what kind of tie it is. If she said, you really should wear a nice navy blue tie, then I have some direction. But how often do we tell our people, you really should pay attention to this more? What is this? What is more? It's a challenge for you to communicate better. Okay, does that make sense? Articulate what you want, and we're going to get to another word that also means that too. That was good. I wasn't expecting that. That was great. So here's a phrase that just keep in your mind all the time. You need to stop shoulding on yourself. Do I need to explain that to you, Bob? All right.
No.
All right. Paul, did you get that? Jim, you understand? Okay. You need to stop shoulding on yourself, but you also need to stop shoulding on each other. Very, very important. So state what you want. Be in detail about it. Okay. Whoops. Got ahead of myself. I know, this is your one, this paybacks are hell. Go ahead.
You know what? I really like your presentation. It's awesome. But you should have put more pictures. Why should again?
That's right. And what's interesting, what she just did, and we actually talked about this, she could have gone, I really like your presentation, but you should have put more pictures on it. Why didn't you do it? Next time, try to do better. If you want a loaded message that is going to just sink me, that will do it. So yes, it's humorous, but here's the point. If you're in a co-located team, by the way, we are all co-located right here. So in companies where you have various offices, I've worked with companies where these words get used in emails, virtual teams. So even if you have somebody you're co-located with, but you have to communicate with them by email, these words can be absolutely deadly in emails. So this is the hardest thing for teams and individuals to correct, this word right here. Perfectly good word. So, what was it that you really liked the presentation, but I need more pictures? Here's what she needs to say. I really like your presentation, and I would like to see more pictures. Wherever you can, substitute the word and for but. Wherever you can, substitute the word and for but. Because but, once again, is a necessary word, but it can be a great negative in communication. And so, the last one I get to do. Lorena, don't smile. Well, damn, you did. All right. Here's something interesting about the word don't. This is absolutely critical. The mind cannot negate a negative. So I'm going to give you all a test right now. You're going to pass it and you're going to fail it. Don't think about the pink elephant. Don't think about the pink elephant. You have to think about the pink elephant, right? So where does this play out? Take a look at young kids. So my granddaughter, who turned 4 in February, I go up to Austin. We're having a birthday party. And she had about 4 or 5 of her friends over. And she has her younger brother, Nicholas, who's 1.5. Nicholas has just started the walk. He's exploring things. And he's just off chilling by himself, and she's got more presents than she knows what to do with, right? And she's playing with her girlfriends, and Nicholas picks up her stuffed unicorn. Now, he's as far away as I am from Paul here, right? She sees it, and she immediately gets up, and she runs over, and she slugs her brother. So what do the parents say? Which is what I always did too. Don't hit your brother, right? So they pull her back. She's now playing. Now he picks up a can of Play-Doh. This is about 5 minutes later. And what does she do? She runs over and she slugs him again. By the way, there's science behind this. Yeah, don't, once again, it's a perfectly good word, but in kids, they cannot separate cognition, the thought, from the behavior. Does that make sense? And in sports, by the way, they're very, very careful to not use the word don't. You don't go out to the mound and talk to a pitcher and say, okay, there's such and such a batter up. Don't throw it over the inside part of the plate. You do not say that because they know how powerful that is. They tell them where they want them to throw it. So those are the 5 words: try, why, should, but, and don't. And thank you very much, Lorena. You did a great job of taking me down. Appreciate it. Okay. So the 5 words that can build a winning culture or destroy it: try, why, should, but, and don't. I'm going to finish up here with happiness is the foundation of a winning culture. And everybody talks about happiness, but actually there are studies that show this. Did you know that a surgeon that is happy is 17% more likely to do a great job than one who isn't? They've measured this throughout all sorts of occupations. Number 1, people want to work. How come they want to work? Work is what gives them the possibility of making life sweet, purposeful, and fruitful. Sweet, purposeful, and fruitful. And they stay or leave more often than not because of who they work with or who they have to report to. This is in thousands of studies. It's not for 50 cents an hour. Yes, sometimes we leave and there's a much better financial opportunity. I'm not saying that doesn't go on, but if you want to, 60 to 70% of the time, people are leaving because of the culture. People want to work. They stay or leave more often than not because of who they work with, who they have to report to. And the reason is, these people, and this is the key, are their social support network. Culture is about inclusion. Do they feel connected? So, are any of you familiar with firefighter training, what goes on there? What happened? You are? You've been through it? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, in firefighter training, they go through a lot of training, but what they tell them, when you go into a building that is smoky and dark, where their headlamps aren't going to even work, you have to stay, here, grab my, you have to stay connected to the person next to you. And you have to keep that chain going. So what they tell the new firefighters is, you all have air tanks, they're good for an hour. But you'll hear this alarm go off when you only have 5 minutes left. So everybody goes in with the chain, everything's fine. And the lead person, what they're trying to do in this dark room, and by the way, they could get hurt. This is a simulated burning building, okay? They're trying to feel for bodies and things like that. What they do to the trainees is, the alarm goes off after they're in there 5 minutes. Yes. And very often they panic and they let go. And so now everybody's groveling around in the dark. The most important thing is to keep that inclusion, to feel connected. And so what happens is they stop the experiment, they go in and rescue all the newbies, and everybody realizes from here on out, I'm never going to let go. But in a good culture, that's what happens. So, do I want to work here? How to create a winning culture? So the questions for you today: what am I doing to create a winning culture? What kind of social support network am I creating in my business? Am I creating and giving the gift of inclusion? And I will finish with this, because let's go back to the frog and the scorpion. We go back to the basketball story. All culture starts within you. We can blame people, circumstances, and things, but guess what? If we're doing that, then we're going to be a victim. And if you're a victim, you're never going to step forward and build a good culture. So, you're either doing one of two things. And by the way, I've played both these roles, and I'm sure all of you have too. But I'm going to close with a poem, Builder or Wrecker. I watched them tearing a building down, a gang of men in a busy town. With a ho-heave-ho and a lusty yell, they swung a beam and a wall fell. I asked the foreman, are these men skilled, like the ones you'd hire if you had to build? He laughed and replied, no indeed, common labor is all I need. I can tear down in a day or two what it's taken builders years to do. I asked myself as I walked away, which of these roles have I tried to play? Am I a builder who builds with care, measuring life by rule and square? Or am I a wrecker who walks the town, content with the labor of tearing down? Thank you. Right.